Today you're going to hear a true story, so absurd it almost sounds like a lie. But relax, because here, the strange is what helps you sleep. Picture the sea, vast and silent, its endless horizon where the sky meets the waters. A place where time seems to flow differently, almost as if reality itself had blurry edges, and what we don't understand could be hiding in its depths. It is in this setting that our tale begins, a story that blends silence, mystery, and dolls. Lots of dolls. There's something almost hypnotic about a calm sea, isn't there? The soft sound of the waves, the salty scent of the wind drifting through the window, the slow movement of the water under the moonlight. Everything invites rest, surrendering body and mind to a state of peace. But sometimes, in the midst of that calm, the unexpected appears. Something that breaks the silent routine with a strange beauty and a faint sense of unease. It was on a quiet morning, with the mist still sliding over the ocean, that a ship appeared on the horizon. A ship that, at first glance, seemed abandoned, a ghost ship. Not a horror story, but a real event, recorded and witnessed by those who saw it. A ship whose sails did not flutter in the wind, whose wood creaked in a strange way, as if it held ancient secrets. And what made this ship even more curious wasn't its size, nor its unusual route, but its bizarre cargo, hundreds of dolls, of different sizes and shapes, scattered across the deck and cabins. Dolls that seemed to have been left there long ago, with glassy eyes staring into nothingness, as if watching not just those who looked at them, but something beyond the sea. You may be wondering, why dolls? Why would a ghost ship be loaded with so many dolls? And what does it mean? These questions began to fill the minds of everyone who heard the story, but the answer still lies in the ocean's silence. Before you let yourself be carried away by speculation or fear, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. Breathe slowly. Feel the imaginary breeze brushing your face. Let the gentle sound of the waves fill your ears. Here, in this story, the strange does not frighten, it soothes. It's as if each doll with its fixed gaze were a guardian of forgotten memories, a symbol of something lost, and perhaps an invitation to dive into a mystery that goes beyond what we can see. In the silence of the sea, between sky and water, the ghost ship becomes an enigma that awakens both our curiosity and our calm, reminding us that even in the unknown, there is a subtle poetry and a quiet beauty that can cradle our thoughts. And so, this story slowly unfolds, like waves that come and go, bringing fragments of the past that the wind of time insists on keeping alive. Prepare to embark on this calm and mysterious journey, where the ghost ship full of dolls invites us to look beyond the obvious, and to find serenity in the mystery. If you wish, at the end of this voyage, you can share your impressions and feelings in the comments. A simple gesture that helps us create this calm community, where the strange is welcome and silence is respected. If you enjoy this story, a like helps us continue bringing you tales like this, told with care and tranquility. And if you want to keep sailing with us through these sleepy mysteries, subscribing to the channel is your ticket to more peaceful nights. Now, take another deep breath, and let the sound of this story wrap around you, as we begin to discover what this ghost ship and its dolls may have to tell us. On that mist-shrouded morning, when the sun was still stretching lazily behind the horizon, a small fishing boat sailed slowly through waters that, to the untrained eye, seemed ordinary. almost indifferent. The air was cold and damp, filled with that silence broken only by the gentle tapping of waves against the hull, a sound that, for sailors, was a constant and familiar companion. But that morning, something different happened. Out of the foggy horizon, a shape slowly emerged, as if the sea itself had decided to reveal a secret it had kept for a very long time. In the middle of that vast blue, a ship, ancient and silent, appeared. It was no ordinary vessel. It seemed lost in time, as though it had sailed for ages without a destination, drifting between the real and the imaginary. The crew of the fishing boat couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines, a mixture of fascination and unease. The ship did not respond to the usual signals of communication, emitted no smoke, and showed no sign of life on its deck. It was as if it were suspended in a space between worlds, a moving shadow in the middle of the sea. As the fishing boat drew closer, the fishermen noticed something even more unsettling. Scattered across the deck, in a disturbing silence, were hundreds of dolls. They lay there, piled and strewn about, some with faded clothing, others with cracked faces, each with eyes that seemed to follow whoever looked at them, fixed in an unexplainable emptiness. It was not a common sight, nor an easy one to grasp. The presence of that ghost ship, loaded with dolls that felt like mute witnesses to a forgotten story, transformed that morning into a moment heavy with a calm unease, where time seemed to slow down and thoughts grew denser, quieter. The fishermen remained there, still, just watching. Some felt an almost instinctive urge to turn away, as if an unseen presence were urging them to respect the mystery without trying to unravel it too quickly. Others, however, could not look away, as if those dolls scattered across the deck were more than mere objects, fragments of a lost memory, perhaps a silent warning from the depths of the sea. In that instant, the ocean seemed to hold its breath. The wind stopped blowing, and even the waves hesitated in their movement. Everything was reduced to this unique encounter between a humble boat and a strange vessel, filled with dolls guarding impenetrable secrets. It is at this point that our story truly begins, where the mystery ceases to be a distant shadow and begins to touch the real. The ship, silent and unmoving, was no longer just a vision. It became an invitation to understand the unexplainable, to dive into the unknown with calm and reverence. And as these thoughts slowly settled in the fishermen's minds, one of them, in a low, almost reverent voice, said, "What do you think these dolls want to tell us?" That simple, direct question became the first thread of a tale that would take us down paths where the strange and the tranquil meet, where the silence of the sea echoes untold stories. And you, on the other side, upon hearing this question, might find your own gaze drifting into emptiness for a moment, in a silent attempt to understand. What stories do these silent dolls carry? What secrets does the ship hide within its ghostly sails? But for now, just let that question drift. Breathe slowly. Feel the soft sea breeze wrap around your mind. Let curiosity take its place without hurry, as if you were sailing in calm waters, with no rush to reach any shore. The ghost ship, drifting silently among the waves, seemed to carry not only dolls but also a story lost in time, a forgotten past hidden in every splinter of its weathered wood. Sailors, fishermen, and the curious began to wonder. What was the origin of this vessel that defied logic and the open sea, that seemed to exist outside of time and space? Ghost ships are nothing new in maritime legends. For centuries, tales of vessels that appear and vanish, silent and empty, have filled the imagination of those who live near the ocean. They symbolize many things: the unknown, the fear of abandonment, memories that refuse to fade away. But deep down, perhaps these ships are more than mere legends. Perhaps they are an invitation to reflect on what we do not understand and cannot control. This particular ship, however, stood apart from the traditional narratives. Its sails, though worn by time, did not flutter. Its hull bore signs of having faced storms, yet also of a strange, deliberate care. And, of course, there were the dolls, an unusual and unsettling cargo that raised more questions than answers. Historical archives of the region were searched in hopes of uncovering clues to the vessel's identity. Nothing concrete emerged. No registered ship had recently disappeared in that area. It was as if the ship had come from nowhere, emerging from the mist and the silence, as mysterious as the dolls it carried. Navigation experts and maritime historians were consulted, yet even they struggled to fit the vessel into any known pattern. The ship's construction suggested an old design, possibly from the previous century, but its paradoxical state of preservation defied any simple explanation. Looking at the ship, it was impossible not to think of the stories it might tell, if only it had a voice. Every plank, every rusted nail, every frayed rope bore the weight of unrecorded journeys, of nights spent beneath stormy skies, of silent encounters with the unknown. The dolls, for their part, added an even more complex layer to the mystery. They were not merely abandoned toys, but perhaps symbols of human memories, fragments of lives the ship had crossed paths with, or perhaps carried away with it into the sea. The absence of clear records about the ship made it an enigma that lingered in the minds of those who heard its story. The vessel was like a blank page filled with cryptic scribbles, a coded letter sent by the waves to those willing to decipher it with patience and calm. And here, where the real meets the inexplicable, the ship's mystery invites us to slow down, to let the imagination flow, without the rush of conclusions. After all, the sea, with its vastness and its secrets, knows how to keep stories for a long time, waiting for the right moment to let them rise to the surface. In the near absolute silence of that ghost ship, the dolls were the only visible inhabitants, scattered across the deck, the cabins, and the vessel's most shadowed corners. They seemed to have been left there not as mere toys, but as silent witnesses to a deep secret hidden in the shadows of the past. Each doll carried with it a strange aura, a mixture of nostalgia and melancholy, that seemed to wrap anyone who looked at them in a quietly unsettling calm. Some had frayed hair, clothes worn thin by time, and glassy stares that, even without life, seemed to hold memories of distant days. Others were broken, missing arms, or with cracked faces, bearing the marks of abandonment and wear. The number was astonishing. It wasn't a matter of a few dozen, but hundreds of dolls, a true sea of small, silent figures that created a unique, almost dreamlike atmosphere aboard the ship. They seemed to be arranged without order, some piled up as if left in a hurry, others organized in an almost ritualistic way, as though the vessel itself were an altar to an unrevealed mystery. It was impossible not to wonder, what was the reason for so many dolls to be there? Were they lost merchandise, an abandoned shipment, or something stranger still? Some theories suggested they could have been part of some ritual or offering, perhaps an attempt to appease a greater force, a spirit that dwelled in the sea. The way the dolls presented themselves, some staring into the void, others with expressions that seemed almost human, created a mood that bordered on the surreal. They were, at the same time, inanimate objects and symbols of something greater, as if they carried fragments of forgotten stories within them. Those who stepped aboard for the first time described a feeling that was hard to put into words, a mixture of peace and unease, as if the dolls were not just toys, but silent sentinels, guardians of a memory that did not wish to be lost. The fine layer of dust covering their faces suggested they had been there for a very long time, perhaps decades, defying both time and abandonment. Each one seemed to hold its own life, an invisible past that invited the gaze to sink into its stillness. And when looking at those dolls, it was as if the ship became a reliquary, a place where childhood, mystery, and solitude blended in a subtle and profound way. A space where silence was not empty, but filled with untold stories, ready to be uncovered little by little, without haste. You, who follow this story now, can picture the scene, the deck crowded with dolls, the air heavy with a silence that was both oppressive and welcoming, and the sense that, even in that abandonment, there was a strange, almost magical beauty. And so we sail on, slowly navigating the sea of mystery, with the dolls as silent guides, leading us down a path where the strange is gentle, and silence is a comforting companion. The ghost ship, now imagined with its deck filled with silent dolls, emanated a profound stillness, almost tangible. A silence that was not merely the absence of sound, but something greater, a space where time seemed to stretch, as if the very vessel were trapped in an eternal moment, suspended between past and present. The calm that enveloped the ship was both unsettling and comforting. There was no usual rustle of sails, no creaking of timbers against the sway of the sea. The ship felt like a held breath, a pause in the ocean's ceaseless motion, where everything around seemed to quiet itself just to listen to what this place might whisper. Upon stepping aboard, those who ventured inside felt a different weight in the air, a dense silence that seemed to carry untold stories and unspoken memories. The floorboards groaned underfoot with distant echoes, as if each step awakened long-slumbering recollections. The sound of silence itself became a strange, inviting melody, wrapping around the senses and soothing restless minds. The shadowed corners and empty cabins spoke of a final absence, an abandonment that left no room for human noise. Yet, within that emptiness, the silence spoke. It spoke of the solitude of a ship that sailed alone, of stories never told, of the gaze of dolls that seemed to watch not the present, but some far-off past. The light, filtered through the mist outside, slipped in through the windows in faint beams, painting soft shadows on the worn walls and deserted deck. Everything seemed frozen in a delicate instant, where silence was king and master, and the surrounding sea was the only guardian of that secret. There were no signs of recent storms, no traces of struggle or panic. Only the cold serenity of a place no longer inhabited by humans, yet still pulsing with an energy of its own, an energy made of silence, mystery, and perhaps an invisible lament. This singular atmosphere made the ship not frightening, but contemplative. A place where time slows and invites whoever arrives to slow down as well. That silence, so full and so empty, felt like an invitation for the soul to rest, for an inward dive where the noise of the world fades away, leaving only the calm of the sea and the echo of unanswered questions. Upon discovering the ghost ship, silent and laden with its mysterious dolls, the approaching crew could not resist the most basic human impulse, to try to communicate. After all, in the face of silence and emptiness, the desire to understand, to hear a response, grows into an almost instinctive need. But how does one speak to a ship that seems lost in time? How does one decipher what lies hidden beneath those worn planks, beneath the quiet shroud of the sea and the dolls? The attempts began with what seemed simplest, traditional maritime communication signals. Flashing lights, radio calls, voices echoing through the air, all in the hope of finding some response, some sign of life. Nothing. Only silence. Dense, almost tangible, like a mute answer that embraced the mystery with respect. The ship returned no signal, no word, no clear clue. It was as if it had left human language behind, speaking instead in a different frequency, perhaps that of silence and waiting. Inside the ship, the search for clues was conducted with care, almost reverence. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty cabins as the investigators tried to find any trace of who, or what, might have inhabited that vessel. Old maps, logbooks, diaries, or letters. Anything that could unveil the hidden story. But all they found were blank pages, torn letters, and what appeared to be a message written in an unknown language, almost like a ciphered code that refused to be unlocked. Communication, therefore, remained blocked, not for lack of attempts, but perhaps due to an invisible barrier separating the ship from the world around it. And the dolls? They seemed to keep their own silence, as if their very presence were a form of wordless communication, a language of empty gazes and unmoving postures. Perhaps they were the true messengers of that ship, carrying a secret that could only be felt, never spoken. At that point, the feeling among the crew was that they were facing something greater. Something that could not be rushed or forced. Communication would not happen through words or signals, but through patience, attention, and respect for the mystery that revealed itself. You, listening to this story, can you picture yourself in that moment, trying to find an answer in the silence? Trying to decipher signs that are unclear, listening closely to what silence might say? It is in that space, between the known and the unknown, that attempts at communication take on a deeper meaning. The meaning of accepting that not everything can be understood immediately, and that sometimes mystery is also a form of calm. Ever since the ghost ship was sighted, the small coastal community where it appeared began to whisper stories, as if the mystery had awakened something long dormant in the waters and in ancient memories. Old tales and local legends, passed down from generation to generation, now seemed to gain new meaning in the silent presence of that doll-covered vessel. The legends of the sea are made of words that drift between the real and the imaginary, like waves that come and go, carrying stories as old as the ocean itself. It is said that certain ships carry not only goods, but also souls and memories, sailing eternally between life and death, between the visible and the invisible. In the village near the place where the ship appeared, locals began telling of an old vessel that vanished long ago, loaded with gifts for children, dolls, toys, and objects of affection. According to oral tradition, the ship was claimed by a violent storm and never returned. Some swear that on foggy nights, you can still hear the distant laughter of children and the faint sound of toys moving in the wind. Other stories speak of a curse, a warning to those who dared venture into forbidden waters guarded by ancient spirits. In this version, the dolls were offerings, gifts left to appease the forces that rule the sea and ensure protection for those who live by fishing and sailing. Some believe the ship is a messenger, carrying fragments of lost lives, a silent reminder that the sea holds not only treasures but also deep, and sometimes painful, secrets. And these stories, which might seem fanciful, possess a peculiar power. They soothe the unease before the unknown, offering explanations that, though not entirely rational, embrace the mystery with respect and tenderness. They are like lullabies for the soul, rocking fear gently with the softness of imagination. Listening to these legends, it is easy to feel time slow down, as if the narrative blended with the sound of the sea, the whisper of the wind, and the rustle of leaves in the trees. Every word seems to paint faint, delicate images, where the ghost ship and its dolls dwell in a world where the strange is not a threat, but a serene companion. You, listening now, can you picture this village, its people, its stories whispered around fires? Can you feel the calm that comes from accepting mystery as a natural part of existence? These local stories, though simple, are bridges connecting past and present, reality and dream, creating a space where the ship and its dolls live not only as objects of curiosity but as symbols of a shared memory, a link between the sea and those who respect it. The mystery of the ghost ship loaded with dolls lies not only in the vessel itself, but above all in the silent figures that dominate its deck. Who could have placed so many dolls there? And why? These questions have become a thread that connects past and present, awakening the quiet curiosity of those willing to listen. Dolls, delicate and fragile objects, carry a deep symbolic weight. They represent innocence, childhood memories, perhaps even protection. But how did so many of them end up on that abandoned ship, lost at sea? This question has several possible answers, some simpler, others wrapped in an almost poetic aura of mystery. One hypothesis suggests that the dolls were a commercial shipment, destined for some far-off port, perhaps part of a delivery lost to time. Maybe a ship transporting toys for children on shore was interrupted by a storm, or by something more enigmatic, leaving the fate of that cargo to be forgotten at sea. But the way the dolls were arranged, some carefully stacked, others scattered as if abandoned in a rush, suggests something beyond simple transportation. Could these dolls have been a gift, an offering left by someone seeking to appease unseen forces, or a ritual meant to connect the human world with the mystery of the ocean? Another possibility points to stories of maritime superstition. Sailors of old, who crossed these waters, believed that certain objects, like dolls or amulets, could protect the crew against storms and misfortune. Perhaps this ship was loaded with dolls to ward off danger, creating a kind of silent shield that was never broken. There are also those who imagine the dolls as memories of lives lost at sea, fragments of personal stories, reminders of children who never got to meet their toys, symbolized by the dolls now resting on the solitary vessel. A silent testimony to both time and absence. Regardless of their origin, the fact remains that those dolls were there, calm, unmoving witnesses to a secret the sea has yet to fully reveal. And whoever placed them there seemed to have a reason beyond immediate understanding, a reason that calls for patience, respect, and a careful eye for the details within the silence. And you, when you picture these dolls, can you feel the presence of the one who left them behind? Can you sense the delicacy or the urgency of a gesture that crossed both time and waves? This reflection invites us once again to slow down, to embrace the mystery without haste, and to allow curiosity to bloom gently, like a soft breeze that brushes the soul. Among the hundreds of dolls scattered across the deck and cabins of the ghost ship, some draw special attention. They are broken, with missing limbs, cracked faces, dull or even absent eyes. These broken dolls seem to carry a different story from the others, a mystery that echoes silently in the still air of the vessel. The presence of these damaged dolls is not a minor detail, but rather an important piece in understanding the nature of the ship and its enigma. Why are so many of them in such a state of evident neglect? What could these cracks and breaks symbolize? Some who have visited the ship suggest that the broken dolls represent fragments of lost memories, pieces of stories interrupted by time and the solitude of the sea. They are like echoes of forgotten moments, as if the vessel itself were a reliquary of shattered memories, kept with an almost reverent silence. There is also a darker hypothesis, linking the broken dolls to a warning, perhaps a curse, left by forces dwelling in the ocean. The cracks and missing parts would be signs that something is incomplete, that a balance has been broken, and that the ship carries a burden not only physical, but also spiritual. On the other hand, the doll's condition could simply be the result of time and abandonment, of the wind, the salty water, and the merciless sun wearing them down over the years. But even this seemingly simple explanation does not diminish the silent fascination the broken dolls exert on those who look at them. They remind us that nothing is perfect, that even innocence can be marked by the passage of time, that memories can fragment, and that the silence of the sea holds not only happy stories, but also the imperfections of existence. When observing these dolls, you may feel a mixture of tenderness and melancholy, as if standing before silent witnesses to a past that will never be fully revealed. And so, the broken dolls invite us to reflect on the fragility of life and time, on the traces we leave and the stories we carry, even when they seem fractured or incomplete. When the news of the ghost ship filled with dolls began to spread beyond the small coastal village, the outside world responded with a mix of fascination, disbelief, and a curious sense of calm. Contrary to what many might have imagined, this story did not provoke panic or fear, but rather a serene interest and a desire to understand, patiently, what lay behind that silent mystery. Local newspapers, and later national ones, reported the event using a language that blended facts with a touch of poetry, trying to capture not just the strange floating object, but the feeling it evoked, a sense of tranquil wonder in the face of the inexplicable. Experts were called, interviews were conducted, and each new report added another layer to the narrative, without ever rushing to conclusions. Maritime historians, anthropologists, and psychologists were invited to share their insights, each bringing a different perspective to the mystery. Yet, despite attempts to rationalize the phenomenon, the predominant reaction was one of serene contemplation. Many people, upon hearing the story, felt invited to slow down, to look at the mystery with less hurried and more welcoming eyes. It was almost as if the ship and its dolls had a calming effect, a pause in the frantic pace of everyday life. On social media, reactions mixed photos and personal accounts with quiet questions, as if the ship were a mirror of the unknown we all carry within ourselves. Curiosity and respect walked hand in hand, and the story spread like a gentle wave of mystery, inviting rest and reflection. Meanwhile, groups of enthusiasts began to organize, eager to understand the ship better, without rush, with attention and care. These communities, made up of people who cherished silence and mystery, became guardians of the story, protecting it from sensationalism and preserving its sleepy, introspective nature. Thus, the outside world did not respond with noise, but with quiet reverence, almost as if that silent vessel and its dolls were a delicate reminder of the importance of embracing mystery rather than trying to dominate it. After the silent discovery of the ghost ship and its enigmatic cargo of dolls, maritime and local authorities began to worry about the presence of that wandering vessel in the coastal waters. At first, there was the natural intention to move the ship away, to ensure navigational safety and avoid potential risks. However, over time, these attempts proved to be more complex than expected. Escort boats were sent to guide the ship to safe areas, but it seemed to resist any control, moving slowly, almost as if it had a will of its own, navigating silently and unpredictably. Efforts to tow the ship were made with care, so as not to damage its structure or disturb the mysterious dolls occupying its deck. Yet, any attempt at intervention seemed to fail in the face of this presence, which, more than an object, appeared to be a silent being with its own serene will. This resistance of the ship to being moved generated a mixture of respect and curiosity among those involved. It was as if the ghost ship wanted to remain there, guarding its secrets and its dolls, refusing to be displaced by force. Among the villagers and fishermen, the feeling grew that the ship was not a threat, but an invitation to contemplation, a silent symbol of something greater than mere maritime traffic. Some began to see the ship as a guardian, a presence that reminded everyone of the importance of respect and patience in the face of the unknown. Official attempts to move the ship, therefore, were marked by delicacy and slowness. It was a process that required more than physical strength. It demanded calm, sensitivity, and a willingness to listen to the silence that the ship seemed to emit. Can you, imagining this serene resistance of the ship, feel the tranquility surrounding this silent struggle? As if the ship had its own consciousness, navigating not only the waters but also the time and emotions of those who observe it. As the ghost ship rested silently in the waters near the village, its mysterious dolls became a source of fascination for the local children. To them, these strange and motionless figures were not merely forgotten toys, but companions in stories and dreams that sailed across the seas of reality and imagination. The children looked at the ship with a mixture of curiosity and wonder, as if the silence of the dolls were an invitation to imagine invisible worlds. Many would sit on the coastal rocks, telling stories about the dolls, inventing names and lives for each one, creating a universe where the ship was not just an abandoned object, but a living character in sleepy tales. In those innocent eyes, the ship held no dark mysteries, only gentle and magical possibilities. The dolls became silent friends, guardians of secrets shared in whispers and quiet laughter. The mist surrounding the vessel seemed to transform into a protective veil, an invitation for imagination to float without limits. The adults observed this bond with a mix of amazement and tenderness, realizing that for the children, the ship was less a puzzle and more a portal to fantasy and comfort. The presence of that mysterious ship began to transform the daily life of the village, bringing a touch of dream and serenity, filling the nights with soft and enchanting stories. And so, the ship and its dolls found a new meaning, not merely as a mystery to be solved, but as a bridge between the real world and dreams, between the silence of the sea and the sweet voice of childhood. The ghost ship, with its silent dolls scattered across the deck, seemed not only to float on the ocean waters but also to sail through the tides of time. The vessel appeared as a capsule where past, present, and future met, suspended in a serene, eternal moment. The passage of time, which for most is continuous and relentless, seemed to have a different rhythm for that ship. The wear on the planks, the fading of the doll's clothes, the absolute silence, all suggested a presence that resisted time, yet was also shaped by it, as if it were a living memory of eternity itself. Stories began to circulate, suggesting that the ship was a kind of floating reliquary, guarding not only dolls but moments, memories, and secrets that time had lost or forgotten. Every sail, every rope, every object seemed to tell a wordless story, a silent poem about the passage of years. This sense of temporal suspension made the ship fascinating, for it did not fully belong to any specific era. It was old and new at the same time, blending elements from various times, as if it reflected the invisible layers that make up time and memory. For those observing from afar, the ship was a reminder of the fragility and beauty of time. It taught that despite losses and changes, there is something that endures, a calm that transcends the constant motion of the world. You, listening to this story now, can you feel the lightness of time enveloping your mind? Can you imagine the ship gliding gently through the tides not only of the sea but of existence itself? In the depths of the ghost ship, where light rarely reaches, lies the hold, a dark, silent space that harbors its own secrets. It is there that the mystery grows even denser, where silence hangs like a curtain and time seems to fold in on itself. Descending the creaking steps, visitors feel a chill that comes not from the wind or the water, but from the very air, heavy with untold stories. The hold is a place where the air is thicker, where the sound of footsteps echoes like a distant whisper. There, among old crates and forgotten piles, one finds different kinds of dolls, some so ancient they seem to belong to another era, others more recent, as if the ship had received silent visitors over time. Each of them has its place in the dark, keeping the memory of days lost to the waves. The hold seems like a reliquary, a space where the past accumulates in layers, and where the ship reveals a little more of its silent soul. It is a place that invites contemplation, an acceptance of mystery without hurry. Some say that answers reside there for questions we do not yet know how to ask, that the hold guards the key to the enigma of the dolls, the journeys, and the silence. When the fog gently descends over the sea, enveloping everything in its whitish cloak, the ghost ship seems to transform into an even more ethereal presence. On nights when the world becomes silent and the air fills with mystery, it appears almost like a floating dream, an image that dances between reality and imagination. The fog acts as a veil, softening shapes and hiding details, inviting those who watch to fill the empty spaces with imagination and calm. The ship, with its silent dolls, seems like a guardian of these misty nights, sailing slowly, almost without making a sound, as if respecting the peace that the fog brings. The villagers say that on such nights, the ship seems to suspend its own time, becoming a mirror for personal memories and feelings. The dolls, wrapped in the fog, take on a faint glow, as if they had a life of their own, whispering stories only to those willing to listen patiently. For those who venture to gaze at the sea at these hours, the ship is an invitation to deep contemplation, a reminder that silence can be a refuge, and that mystery, when embraced without haste, transforms into poetry. At the heart of the ghost ship, where silence reigns supreme, many who have ventured to explore it report a sensation that is difficult to explain: the invisible presence of something, or someone, that watches, follows, but never fully reveals itself. This invisible presence is not threatening. On the contrary, it is a silent companion, a whisper in the calm of the deck, a delicate shadow that seems to be part of the mystery surrounding the ship and its dolls. Some describe this sensation as a gentle touch in the air, a faint warmth that comforts without intruding, a gaze that does not weigh but embraces. It is as if the ship itself harbors a soul, an essence that persists beyond time and space. This invisible presence, though unseen, is deeply felt. It seems to be the link that connects the ship to the world, a bridge between the silence of the dolls and the mystery of the ocean. Since the ghost ship appeared in the nearby waters, the coastal village where it rests has felt a subtle, almost imperceptible, yet profound change in its essence. The ship, with its silent dolls and serene mystery, has become a presence that touches the lives of the villagers in delicate and soothing ways. Once dominated by the fast pace of daily life, the village has begun to breathe in a different rhythm. People have started to slow down, to listen more to the silence, and to contemplate the mystery that floats on the horizon. Conversations now include stories about the ship, its dolls, and the quiet that seems to envelop everything with a comforting calm. Some villagers report gentle, inspiring dreams, where the dolls gain voices and stories, carrying messages that touch the heart and calm the restless mind. Others feel a renewed connection with the sea, seeing in it not only a source of work but also of mystery and serenity. The presence of the ship has also awakened a collective feeling of protection and respect. People care for the coast more attentively, preserving the environment and avoiding disturbing the ship, as if they know that something resides there that deserves to be cherished with patience and care. This silent effect has spread beyond the village's borders, reaching visitors who seek in the ship's mystery a refuge for the soul, a place where time slows down and silence becomes an invitation to rest. The ghost ship, shrouded in fog both on the sea and in time, seems to navigate not only the waves but also the faded layers of memories and dreams. This fog of time is a delicate mist that softens the edges of reality, blending past and present in a silent dance. Within this fog, the ship is not merely an object, but a symbol of collective memory, floating between what was and what could have been. The dolls resting on its deck are silent witnesses to this journey, keeping secrets and stories that resist the erosion of time. Those who observe the ship from afar often describe a profound sense of calm, as if the fog envelopes not only the vessel but also the hearts and minds of those who behold it. It is a fog that invites reflection, rest, and an embrace of mystery. This ethereal atmosphere transforms the ship into a place where time seems to slow, where the worries of the world vanish, making room for an almost tangible peace. In the fog of time, the ship is a silent beacon for those seeking refuge in the serenity of the unknown. Over the years, the ghost ship laden with dolls became more than a maritime mystery. It transformed into a legacy for the village and for all who knew it. This legacy is not found in tales of fear or panic, but in the serenity it inspired, in the constant invitation to slow down and contemplate the unknown with respect and calm. The ship is now a symbol of patience, a reminder that some stories do not need to be unraveled hastily, and that silence can also be a form of wisdom. Its dolls, silent and motionless, remain as guardians of this legacy, witnesses to the idea that the strange can be an invitation to rest and reflection. The ship's presence influenced generations, teaching the importance of embracing mystery without fear, of finding beauty in what cannot be fully understood. Its story came to be told in a gentle voice, almost like a lullaby for the restless soul. The sea, even when it seems calm, holds a silence that is not empty. It is full of stories. Some, like that of the ghost ship loaded with dolls, cross time like slow, invisible currents, touching those who pause to listen. Others dissolve in the waves, as if they had never existed, leaving only a soft echo in the memory of the waters. This ship, in particular, remains, not necessarily as a physical vessel lost somewhere in the ocean, but as an image that has imprinted itself on us. A memory that blends strangeness and serenity, fear and fascination. The dolls, motionless and silent, seem to continue gazing at the horizon, and, in some way, gazing within us as well. The mystery of the sea is that it returns questions instead of answers. In trying to understand stories like this, we realize that perhaps the most important thing is not to solve the enigma, but to accept that it exists. The ocean is a master at reminding us that not everything can be controlled, that there are forces and paths that escape logic. And perhaps that is why stories like this touch us so deeply, because, at heart, they set us free. They allow us not to know, and yet to feel. They show us that life can be full even with blank pages, even when we find no explanations. As you listen to these words, imagine yourself by the seaside at sunset. The golden light spreads over the water's surface, and the sound of the waves blends with your calm breathing. In the distance, a shape could be a boat, or merely a play of shadows and clouds. But it doesn't matter. What matters is the moment, the feeling that the world keeps turning, that the sea continues singing, and that some stories are destined to lull us forever. The ghost ship loaded with dolls is now yours too. You carry it in your memory, in the images you formed while hearing this narrative. And like all who have ever known it, you may tell it again, perhaps changing details, perhaps inventing others. Because the most beautiful mysteries are those that allow new shapes each time they are remembered. If this journey through the sea and the unknown touched something within you, leave a comment. This way, the story stays alive, gaining new voices and perspectives. If it brought you peace, a like is a silent way of saying, thank you, for this moment of calm. And if you wish to keep discovering stories like this, which unite the strange and the serene, subscribe to the channel. Here, every mystery is a gentle anchor that helps slow down. Now, close your eyes. Let this surreal reality fade into the mist of your dreams. Good night.